Ready to convene.
Okay, so the meeting is called to order. Dave, are there any additions to the agenda?
I have none.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the agenda as written?
I'll motion to approve it as written.
Thank you. Thank you, Rita. Steve, did you say you would second it? We have a motion to approve the agenda. Is there a
I
second?
need more.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Steve's not.
A roll call vote for all in favor of accepting the agenda. Craig?
Aye.
Aye.
Rita?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
And Bob?
Aye.
Motion carried. You've had a chance to review the November minutes. Are there any corrections to the agenda? Did anyone see anything? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes from November as written? Steve, a motion to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Rita. And a roll call vote to approve the minutes. Craig?
Aye.
Rita?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Bob?
Abstain. I wasn't here.
And I approve as well. Okay, on to important business of welcoming a new member to our park board, Bob Nessheim. And would you tell us a little bit about yourself, Bob?
I am a retired physician. For the last 6 years, we've operated Pincushion B&B at the top of the hill. And that had difficult times this last year for two reasons. I have a lung problem, so I'm losing lung function gradually from an autoimmune disorder. And so I don't have a lot of aerobic reserve. I can't ski, I can't shovel snow, and you can't run a ski resort if you can't do those things. And then also, it wasn't a great COVID year. We stopped having guests in March. And between those two things, we decided to put it up for sale. And it's now a second home for Paul and Jess Anderson, who are operating it as a VRBO. And I wanted to move somewhere on a trail. It's not a ski trail, but it's a bike trail right across the street. So we bought Jen Stoltz's house when Jen Stoltz moved out to Devil Track. So we're on 4 acres, we're in town, we're on a trail, we have a hiking trail to the north. I've been a lifelong outdoors person, and I don't know if you saw the Vita I submitted to the council, but I've done just a whole lot of park and trail advocacy. Spear Hiking Trail and Gitchigami Trail and Park and Trail Council of Minnesota. I was a rec director and a camp counselor back in the day, camp doc for 20 years, outdoorsy stuff. But I can't do the aerobic things anymore. But I can walk, I can ride a bike with some assistance, and I can certainly sit through meetings.
It sounds like you're well qualified.
Yeah, it's quite a step down in terms of activity, but you know, a lot of 70 odd years of experience and an awful lot of meetings and legislative advocacy and, you know, work on bonding and stuff like that. And as I was telling Dave the other day, where we live now is in the forest, and the park is just down the street, and the harbor is still just down the street. So it's our trail, our park, our access to the harbor. So since we're in town, I have a very personal investment in keeping that part of the city accessible both to locals and to visitors in a nice balance, to keep that balance.
Do I infer correctly that you live on the lake side of Highway 61?
We're on the upper side.
Okay.
We're right across, right across from Northern Wilds, right between the Aspen Inn and the Wunderbar.
Okay.
There's a chunk of woods there, and there's a house in the woods. and we are in that house.
Well, welcome. It sounds like you're well suited to being a member of the park board.
It's a lifer kind of a deal.
Yeah, welcome, Bob, and thanks for stepping up. And so Bob and I met yesterday. We did a nice orientation. I shared with him our 3-ring binder of documents and master plans and minutes for a year. And a fun fact I learned was Bob's got an affinity for Boulder Park across the bay, near the Coast Guard station, due to his kite flying hobby. So that's kind of a fun fact there. Bob is a flyer of those kites you see in the summer over on either the harbor when the wind's blowing east or East Bay when the wind's blowing west.
Well, I always wondered who was flying the kites.
Yeah, if you see like 4 or 5 up at the same time, those are ours. And if they say there's no wind, there's never no wind. There's just incompetent kite flying.
Except that one weekend we tried to have a kite festival.
I got mine up.
Oh, good work, Bob. Thanks so much for stepping up and welcome to the board.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, we got an executive summary from Paul on the golf report. Are there any questions on the executive summary or any
I
questions?
thought it was a wonderful document. And my only suggestion for anything different is to put some numbers attached to the marketing goals that are on the last page. Other than that, I think it's a wonderful, wonderful report.
Well, thank you.
It was very informative and helpful to look at what ground you've covered this year, what went well, and some of your goals for next year. That was helpful.
Yeah, and I can speak a little bit to the marketing and the numbers there, Steve, where we have a budget item in our expense column for marketing at the golf course. Typically, we budget, I believe, $3,800 is the line item we were carrying for 2020 marketing, $3,800. And yet, with this COVID and sort of suspension of marketing, especially early season, we didn't do that number justice. We only really spent about $1,600 on marketing, and most of that is just one big ad or one big buy with the Wild North Golf Group. It's kind of a Northland conglomerate of advertising that it's about a $900 ad membership, annual arrangement. So we did sort of feel that surplus of extra marketing dollars, both in the golf course and the campground for the 2020 season. We really didn't do much marketing at all. Once March came around and we were in that COVID mode and not sure if we were going to open. And so we passed, we passed on several typical spring ad opportunities for both the campground and the golf course, and some of the regional Northern Wilds as an example of a publication we didn't advertise in that we usually do, especially for the golf course, because we knew it reached the Canadian market. So yes, there's potential to advertise. A couple $1,000s was left on the table from this year. It doesn't really roll over, but we have that same amount that is programmed into the 2021 budget, close to $4,000 for marketing. And both Paul and I have been talking about this for a number of years of a target, like a digital ads on your YouTube feeds, on your Facebook feeds that are much more targeted to golfers, and particularly golfers that are in the region, in the county. So we're pretty aware of the need to market more now that we've got our product up to the promise of come on out, have a great time. We're a little leery to do any marketing in 2018, especially when we were in that rebuilding mode and didn't know just how the conditions were going to turn out. But that's definitely a goal for 2021.
I do have one thought about the long term, and that is the one thing that we don't have at the golf course that it would be nice to have is somebody who gives lessons. And I know that finding a pro to move up here would be very difficult, but I wonder if it would make sense to advertise in the Northeast area for somebody who is able to give lessons, even if they aren't the highest level of professional. Anybody, most of the golfers we have could use lessons, including me. So give some thought to how that might work, just to see if there's somebody out there who thinks they can teach others how to do it.
Does Scott
I've
have
heard there for more
anybody?
than one person, Steve, so that might be interesting to look into. I've heard a few people ask that.
Does Scott have anybody down at Lutzen that could teach?
I believe Lutzen has a pro. I mean, I know Heath Ekstrom, the clubhouse manager. I don't know if he does lessons. I'm not sure on that one. But we had, when I first started here 15 years ago, there was a fellow. He stayed in the campground during the summer, and he was a pro. That was his nickname. He was like, "Call me Pro," and he gave lessons. But I don't believe it was an employee for the city. We certainly don't list that in the job description or any on like our union, pay scale. We don't have a position that really would touch on this or would be in that category. I don't know if this is like a third-party contractor we're looking at, but yeah, interesting point.
I'm assuming that if we had somebody do this, whatever they made would be a product of the fees that were charged. It wouldn't be a problem with the budget. It would be a contract position.
That's right.
Yeah, I was interested in talking with some of the reps from Calway and some of the professional companies to see, if they have any services. I know that they do fitting days and different promotions like that. And I've kind of thought that something like that might be a good fit for us, just as intermittent
You bet.
workshops, seminars. I don't know if we'd really want to get Heath involved. Basically we're kind of an opposing golf course. He's got his own teaching situation down there, I think. But yeah, I don't think that would be real difficult to set something up like that. Just finding someone to come up and do something like that on a, you just mark the day, maybe twice a month or something.
I know at one point there was talk from the YMCA of establishing a program as well, in a lesson setting or especially for youth. There was some excitement around that. Emily Marshall, I know, is a golfer and has, kids who golf, and she was interested in youth instruction a couple of years ago. Of course, everything's been kind of on pause for the last year.
Right. Yeah, they could even consider putting one of those indoor, virtual golf
Simulators.
in there.
Yeah, simulators. Big bucks in the off season.
Yeah.
Paul, can we go back to having some half buckets of driving range balls while we're on golf course stuff, instead of only being able to buy a full bucket? I know we used to be able to buy half. I don't know.
Yeah.
That was a question that was brought up to me for people that just want to warm up and hit a half a container of driving range balls.
Yeah, we can do that. We sure went through a lot of range balls.
Yeah, there's a lot.
I did run into a couple people that we'd see them walking around with a bag, and they'd be bringing it to their car, and we'd be telling them that, well, you can't really take those with you, and so anyway, we just explained to them that where we talking about that, we just told them, well, we'll just let you hit them next time you're here or whatever. But yeah, I think that's not difficult to come up with a smaller package.
Are there any other golfing topics that we need to talk about? Do we know anything about the disc golf, or should we just move on until we know more? Where are we at on that?
Maybe Paul could make it warmer sooner.
Make it warmer sooner, yeah. Yeah.
And I did have a question, Paul. What are your budgeting for the gas golf courts? The 3, you want to get 3 a year. What are you budgeting for each of those?
Well, it looks like it's around 15,000.
For 3?
Yeah, I was just talking with one of the representatives about getting lined up for 3 carts. And the best scenario for us is just to buy new ones. They lose an amazing small amount of value over the first 5 years, and it's crazy. So yeah, I've got some things in mind for trying to make to me the carts are a category that we make a lot of revenue from, and so I just want to keep trying to enhance that as much as we can. New carts or newer carts would be a part of that, and we had talked to some of the members had interest in maybe trying to throw up another building and have some storage facilities, which it's kind of different from what we're doing now, but there might be a good scenario for that, and so I'm kind of looking at that in the numbers, and but so far, yeah, that's what we're doing. We'll end up with running. We've got right now in operations, we've got 8 electric carts that are running. We've got 6 gas carts, and these carts they've had a lot of service, so we'll be putting out the new carts, getting a little more money for those, and then running the other carts as well, and just trying to beef up the fleet as soon as we can, with any funds or means that we find where we can advance that. I think it would be good. But there's a couple of things that would fall into play there. Like I say, some of the members had an interest in trying to gather up some interest in putting up another building, and if we're able to get that to happen, that gives us a different situation.
They can each have their carts and pay storage or something.
Yeah, and from my perspective, it's for some reason people like to own their own carts. They still have to pay a storage fee and a trail fee, so there's really not a financial advantage to them, but they still just like having their own carts.
Sure.
It's kind of it's weird, but that's how everybody does it all over the state. And so then we would still have our additional carts that we have purchased that would basically be.
Paul, if it's worth noting that one of our regular players lives way up at the end of the trail, but he's a general contractor, and he might be interested in doing something with the building at less than full price. Who knows? The Valentini.
Yeah, I've been talking to Michael. He actually was one of the people that was interested in that too. So
wonderful.
Yeah, we had actually looked at one of the buildings that's coming down. I saw that was on the notes, but it's the way that it was put together, it doesn't come apart cleanly, so it's really not a realistic scenario.
Thank you, Paul, or Craig. Paul.
Yeah.
Craig, do you have anything from the city council that impacts the park board in any way?
No, the last meeting we had, we went through more of the zoning change that we're working on. We made a few changes to it, and then our next meeting now will be reading those written changes back into the new ordinance. And then we'll probably be getting pretty close to do the first reading on that zoning change. So pretty much that's what we worked on last meeting, was the zoning.
Okay. So now we're on to the park report, the 2020 recap.
Yeah, thanks, Sally. And just to back up a little bit with Paul and the golf. So we're pretty much wrapped on 2020. Paul's got a little downtime now to make up for all his long hours in the summer, but he's still available, and we will have the 2021 rates as sort of the next order of business. The next 2 or 3 months, we want to get our rates set for 2021. I think last year we did that in March or so. So we'll look for some more insight from Paul on rates and get those approved over the next few months. But thank you, Paul. Great season.
Thanks, Dave. Thank you.
Okay, so parks report I sent out earlier in the day. Hopefully everyone had a copy in their inbox. Pretty short and sweet. No big news on the revenue expense side of things. Not a lot of change in November. It was, sort of obviously slow month. We were closed, but Sam did a great job chasing down several accounts receivables that were in that 90-day over column. A lot of monthly guests. We were pretty loose on terms with paying your bill. It must be paid in full by the end of the year. And so we had some outstanding accounts for seasonal guests that brought in some money in November and eked us right up to that goal of 1.336 million. You see, we're sitting at 1.324. So just $8,000 short of our budget expectations. Very good news for what could have been a very rough year. And we're certain to make up that money now in this month of December, as we've opened up for June reservations, and we're taking deposit money in this month of December, which is sort of new money or a new way of doing things. And we're talking with the Kim downtown and the finance department to make sure that our 2021 budget isn't too heavily impacted by this change. We don't feel it will be, as it's just a matter of $10,000 or so. Although January income will look less, etc. So we'll see how this shakes out, but we're definitely in a transitionary year with the change in the reservation policy and taking deposits now. So expenses tracked just right as we planned, a little bit lower than budgeted, and we'll finish at, I think, just around $1 million for 2020 expenses. So the general fund will be happy with our contributions. The 2021 reservations opened this morning for June, and what would be early July for those folks coming with that idea of a wraparound. It was much busier today than it was a month ago on November 1st. It was when May opened, and really no surprises here. We had very light demand for May, as we're pretty low occupancy. A lot of folks know they needn't reserve in May, especially when they're showing up for front row sites. That sort of business is a typical May. So we only did about 23 reservations last month for May. However, I think we're up to 30 some already today.
60.
60. Yeah.
Wow.
So it's great. We're really, so far so good with the new system. We don't feel like everybody knows about it yet. But it's been a nice kind of soft easing into things with being open for June now and early July. We had a lot of interest in, late June through the first week or two of July with the 4th of July weekend. And we're still working with Book Your Site and our software to make sure everything's going to work in January when we get a little more busy, because we're going to be booking for July and that first start of August in a month from now. But so far, so good. The big news here with park board seat vacancies, it's Sally Berg's last meeting.
Yes.
And Sally has really been there for us over the last 6 years. Sally, I got to say thank you.
You're welcome. It's been my pleasure.
Yes.
Kind of miss it.
Yes. Well, there's openings on other boards. and I think we just need to take a year or so off. There's a term limit here. You can serve 2 consecutive 3-year terms, and so Sally's at that limit after tonight. But with a little time off, you never know. We might see Sally again. But yeah, really thank you. And your seat will be available for appointment in January when the new city council is seated and they make their biannual board appointments. So there'll be 1 vacancy for sure. Now, Rita's seat was appointed. You were appointed into a vacancy, Rita, that expires tonight, or was the last meeting for that 3-year term. But because you're newer, you have the opportunity to reapply and serve a full 3-year term.
Gotcha. Well, I wasn't aware that's where I was, so I read that today and said, "Oh,
Yeah.
Can she do it orally?
huh?"
Can she reapply orally using her previous paperwork?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, you'll just have to send me an email or send Hayden an email that you're interested. She'll still need to be appointed by city council but we'll need some kind of record of interest.
I hope you will continue, Rita. You've been a really valuable member of the park board and come with a lot of knowledge about the park and experience as a
Thank you, Sally.
park person.
That's
Yeah.
very kind. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So just when we thought we were a full board, we've got our 5-member board tonight. Mark it on the calendar. But come January, yeah, we'll be hoping to fill those 2 vacant seats with reapplication and perhaps a new application. So put the word out. Patrick Knight is the communications director in City Hall, who's, I think, in charge of these applications and the appointment process. So feel free to reach out to Patrick.
So who is Hayden
Hayden is the secretary,
of?
City Hall.
Oh, okay. I must have met him, but I thought Patrick was the one who normally does our meetings, and I thought, but Patrick hasn't been replaced, I gather.
No, they're just sharing duties, or Hayden's been cross-trained in the live streaming.
Wonderful.
Yeah. More good news. The Public Works Garage is another legacy project, is nearing completion as far as getting the old shop and garage that are at the end of the road here. The ad has been out all last month, I believe, for firm quotes for building demolition. The last day to submit those will be this Friday at 4:30 downtown City Hall. I know they've got some interested parties, so that's good news. And once everybody's in after Friday, we'll look at those numbers, and City Council, I think, will make the decision on this one, as or the public utilities. In fact, it's their buildings, and so they'll certainly be selecting the contractor and footing the bill for the demolition of those garages. But we're all really excited for this. It's been 30-40 years in the making, and with any luck, they might even be gone this month. If the weather holds, that could be really something. Yeah. And so
Dave, does the cost for removing that city stuff be borne by the city or by our budget?
Well, they're one and the same, Steve. We are the city. The general fund might chip in a little for the street department side of things, but then the electric department, who occupied the other half of those buildings, is in the public utilities fund. And so I'm not too worried about who's going to pay this. It's going to be coming out of the city budget, yes. And it shouldn't be that absorbent either. If any indication of experience, when we demoed the old Tom Tabota site, that wasn't too bad. When we took down the pool, I think that was about $50,000 type of number here. So it's nothing we can't afford. And I'm pretty sure the public utilities will be footing some or most of that bill.
Okay.
Yeah. So site prep, more or less, getting ready for the DNR boat launch project. Haven't heard any updates from those folks, but the word was back in September that they were hoping for bidding of the breakwater component this month in December. So I'll continue to follow up with St. Paul and the DNR and make sure that project's on track for bidding of the breakwater. And that would allow the contractor then to mobilize the real heavy stone this winter, as we've talked about before. It'd be best to bring the bigger stone down for the new breakwater in the off season and in the frozen road season. So with any luck, that'll be mobilized and bid and awarded in the next couple months, and we'll get that stone down here. And construction would not start until June. There's a moratorium because of Lake Superior trout spawning. You can't work in the water till June. Maybe it's the 15th even. So the spring, May conditions down there won't be changed much. We've told a lot of the bigger boats that hauled out there in the fall that will be available for launch in the spring in May. But then looking ahead to next fall, we're not sure where that project will be at. The parking lot land side is a separate phase, and it will be a separate bid, and that may not be bid until next June. So we're still very much a work in progress there.
Can you let us know, Dave, when they're moving those big rocks and when they're going to build the breakwater? I've never seen a breakwater be built, and I'd be interested in wandering down to watch a little bit of it.
You bet, Steve. Yeah, there'll be definitely monthly updates, and you'll be able to hear the beeping, and the site will be closed to the public. That was an important note we found out from the DNR in September, late September, when we looked at their plans. There, as safety and job safety would require that there be fencing and a closed construction site once they do start to build. So you'd have to admire their work from a bit of afar, and there'd be some temporary fencing and a construction gate, and the public would not be welcome down at that point this summer. So it'll definitely be impacting the turnaround ability down there, and some of the auxiliary parking that's offered down there. I think of the trailers that are piling up down there from our seasonal marina guests. And so we've got some logistics to work out with that area not being available once construction starts in June. But we've got some time to figure that out. Of course, the dog pound's in that same zone, same schedule. Whether or not it gets into the demo bin with the shop, I doubt it, is kind of my indication or my feeling that because the county and the city haven't come together on a suitable replacement yet, we're not just going to tear the old one down until a new or a solution is agreed upon. And so it's likely that that building will remain even after the shops are taken down sooner. So, but eventually it's going to have to go. And then the last one is the beavers are back. If you haven't already noticed, fence them up, fence up your trees, even though we've now seen them poking their noses through the fences, and they're just in that mode. It's, sink or swim with the cache, with the winter cache. And so we lost a few little ash trees down by the marina. One of them was fenced. Most of our, quality trees have got really good fences on them. And so we're back into that defensive mode of trying to minimize their impacts on our landscape trees. But they're really having their way with the softwoods, especially out west here down by the big lake and some of those lakeside tent sites across from the ball field area. They've taken down some bigger birch. And
Could we sell tickets?
Sure. But it's great to get we've got a great following, with the walkers down here and the dogs and all the local folks using the park. They're really keen on letting us know the latest tree the beaver took down, and it's kind of a blow-by-blow account. But it looks like they're packing back into the North House dock, which is where they set up 2 years ago in 2018 when we attracted all that attention and had the newspapers. But that's North House property, North House problem as we see it. But I'm sure they're aware of it. So that's all I have for December.
Okay. Well, then let's go to our old business on the monthly rates. You sent out some good information to us to help prepare us for the discussion.
Yeah, well, I felt, we left off November with a lot to talk about tonight. I tried to sort of frame it up with maybe the last, at the end of the document, the back under the little color-coded map are those three. Well, and then four, if we look at the middle of the first page where the question was raised in November, should we continue to offer individual monthly rates or shift to a model that only offers one seasonal rate? This was Rita, early on in our discussion last month. And so that's a question for discussion tonight, as well as some of those final questions about a 1 month rate, sunsetting monthly rates on prime sites. That seems to be a reoccurring topic. And then the restructuring of storage policy so that we don't allow a storage rate on a camping month, for example. I don't know how many people are familiar with storage down here. Maybe not so much. We have the 12-month plan, which is kind of a passover of the old idea that you pay the 5.5 months of camping from May 1st through October 15th. And then your off-season storage is complimentary. So from October 15th to May 1st, you can store on site. And that had always been the model to encourage like long-term summer guests rather than just the 2 and 3 month cherry pickers coming for July and August. Years and years ago, park boards were keen on May to October occupancy for monthly sites. So they made an incentive there that said you have complimentary storage when you pay May to October. And this was 4 or 5 years ago. That was the model of seasonal year-round, occupancy May and October, storage November through May. That price way back in maybe 2015 was around $3,000. And we since retooled that in 2016. We created that idea of a 12-month plan. We called it the 12-month plan. It's the same idea. You pay 5.5 months of occupancy, camping rates, and your winter storage is included. And yet that's not the only way to store down here. We also allow a 3-month minimum, that is June, July, and August, and then 9 months of storage. And again, that's only on standard sites. That doesn't happen on prime sites anymore. After 2016, we said, prime sites are too prime. We're not going to take $74 a month for May or September on those. We're going to make you pay the full 12-month rate if you're storing on site on prime sites. So that's why you look at this map, and almost all the prime sites are in that orange category. They're in that 12-month plan. Everybody from 2016 that got that change didn't decide to move their trailer off because it was going to be $1,500 more. They just bit the bullet and signed up for the 12-month plan. However, that policy did not extend to standard sites. We still allow a standard site to stay 3-month minimum of peak season rates, and then you are allowed to pay storage of what is now $74 a month for those other 9 months. And that would represent the pink people on this map. That's about 17 or so folks. Some people do 3 months, some people do 4 months. But that's kind of the bargain price for year-round use for, say, 3 months of occupancy, June, July, and August, and then 9 months of storage. And that's been coming up around $2,800, $2,900, right? Versus the
39.73.
Yeah, 39. It's about $1,000 less. And that's an area for discussion. It's an area for money on the table. If we feel like those sites are, even though in May and October we got plenty of full hookup sites, it's not like we need those sites in May. And years ago, we probably thought, we'll take $70 on that site in May versus nothing, because we have an abundance of sites in May and October. September's changed. Now we could use that site in September. We'd probably make $1,000 on it versus $70. So maybe it just takes a different idea that you need to do 4 months minimum versus 3. It would be an incredible rate hike, though, for those 17 folks that are used to the $2,800 deal to store on site to now be faced with the $3,900 deal. That's just one thing to keep in mind. They would have that option of moving off site to save a lot of money. They could store somewhere else or take it home with them. So they would have an option. But that's been an idea we've been kicking around to make more on these seasonal sites. And it parallels that idea of only offering seasonal, $4,000 plans.
Well, I kind of feel like if you leave your RV on a site for 12 months, that's a seasonal site, whether it's standard or prime, right?
Right.
That seems like they've moved all their stuff in. You can't call them.
You're tying it up. That's right.
You're tying it up. It's a seasonal site.
It is. And it's returning around $2,900, which is close to average for the rest of those monthly sites. It's really interesting. We can look at what each site makes, and we have these neighbors that maybe one of them is in the pink zone. They're paying that 3 + 9 for $2,900. And then the other guy right next door is like the green guy. So I'm looking at site 59 and 58 is a really good example here. And even though 58 is just a 2-month, I come for July and August, and I've been doing that for 20+ years, special guy. And then the other 10 months, or no, I shouldn't say 10, but the other like 3.5 months of June, May, and September and October, that site makes the same amount of money as site 59, right? They both average around $3,000. So it's not a clear-cut case of like we're losing big money on 2-monthers or 3-month plus storage. It seems like that $3,000, $3,200 is a very across the board average for what we're fetching on seasonal sites, whether they're doing 2-month plans or 3 in storage or 3 and they leave. It's been really eye-opening, especially with COVID. Certain sites were empty this season. They were Canadian sites that didn't store on site. I'm now looking at site 146. The green site 146 on the left side of the map is a Canadian. They've been coming for years, only for July and August. We rent that site. They don't store on site. We rent that site out then to nightlies and weeklies, or even a month in May and June and September and October. And even though this year the Canadians weren't here, we didn't have that $1,600 deal for July and August, the site effectively made the same amount of money this year as last year. Right, Sam? I mean, you got these numbers closer, but I was surprised to find that in an apples to apples comparison of a very nice site, that one year ran as a 2-month site and the next year ran as a nightly, weekly drop-in site. End of the day, there was like maybe a $300 difference, this year versus last year. It didn't like double our money like we have sometimes bragged about. I think that only works on the viewy prime sites. On the sites that have the views, certainly they would yield more nightly, weekly because of the view, because of they'd be more occupied in May and September than some of these back of the lot sites without the view. They just sit empty in May and October.
But are you saying 146, is that a seasonal site, Dave?
It is.
That's given to someone on the list that wants it for 12 months and wants to pay 12 months? That's what I'm thinking about.
Yes, it's a monthly site. It's been in the hands of Canadians who've been coming to it for 20 plus years that only come in July and August. And so they couldn't come this year, and they don't store on site.
So they just pay
they just pay a 2-month deal at those, rack rates of like $850 a month or whatever, it's a little bit less. Back in the day, they were probably paying $825, but so they get July and August for $1,600. And yet when we had that site available this year to sell on nightly rates in July and August, we sold it every night. It was full, but at the end of the season, at the end of the 5.5 months, it was the same $3,500. It was really interesting to see that.
So Dave, what impact did the delay of the opening of the park for nightly rentals until July, would that have impacted the total revenue on that to some extent or not?
Again, I can't nail that, but I'm intuitively thinking it didn't have much an effect because that site would have sat empty in May anyway. Even though we were closed in May, our occupancy is so low in May that only the prime sites are occupied in May. And the non-view sites sit empty until about mid-June when we opened up. And if you recall, we opened in June for self-contained RVs. In like early June, you could come in with a full hookup site, and all the nice sites here on the harbor with the view were occupied starting as soon as we were open. But all the mediocre sites without a view sat empty until it warmed up and everybody got into summer mode, and late June when our occupancy spikes because the weather's finally warm. I don't think we had much of a loss, and we saw that in our numbers where we finished really strong in June. June numbers were even with the previous year, even though we weren't open for tenters the first 2 weeks. We were open for self-contained RVers, and they came and occupied us about the same amount as the previous June. So we just lost the tent income, I guess, is what I'm saying. But yeah, really interesting analysis that it really depends on the site, the view, the value, the demand. And we don't have a huge demand in May and October. So this idea that we're losing out by only taking $74 of storage on a May stored, trailer. Yes and no, because maybe that's better than that site sitting empty in May and October.
Is that a site that can be occupied by someone who wants a 12-month site, a seasonal site?
Yes. If and when, well, it's just a matter of when the Canadians that have first rights on it now,
Right.
pass, we go to the waiting list and it'll go to a 12-monther. Or 6 months and they take their trailer with them. But just like I explained on the front page here, the placement policy off the waiting list is only calling people that are interested in May to October.
I think it would be wise for us to really look at the 3 to 4 months with storage with the eyes of maybe that should be an option. Maybe because we have that trailer sitting there and we can't rent it out to anybody, site out, that might be a place where we could add to our revenue with people who are interested or willing to pay more than, use the seasonal plan as long as we're storing it.
How much annual addition would there be if we went to a 4-month minimum?
Money-wise, Steve, or just like conversion of people?
Money-wise.
Well, it's so if
You're
there's
getting $1,000 a month.
You're looking at about $8,000 or $9,000.
Yeah, if it's, let's say we apply that to 17 people, that instead of paying $74 a month, they pay
One extra.
like $795. So it's $725 times 17. It could be over 10 grand, 12,000, assuming they're all 3-monthers. But in that 17 count, there's some 4-monthers already. Maybe Sam can do some quick math on how many are just the 3-monthers. And if there's like a dozen of them and they suddenly have to pay $700 more per year, it's still going to be close to $10,000. And their net boost would be that it'd be about $725 more.
I just think if someone's only going to have something there for 3 months and then they get that really low rent for parking, leaving their camper there, but we cannot use that site to bring revenue in, it doesn't seem to be a good business decision in my book.
No, would it be cheaper for them just to pay the seasonal rate of $3,900 then?
I don't think so, Rita.
If they're paying 4 months at,
They're paying 28 to 29 now.
4 months with 8 months of storage is $36.64.
well, so it's almost pretty
4
close
months.
then. 300 off.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
And that's what we've seen for some guests that are on that bench right now. We've got some like mid-May to the end of the season folk that were like, oh, we don't like coming till it gets warm, which is the end of May or whatever. And we've run that number, and it's a better value to do the 12-month plan. It's a little bit cheaper actually than adding up like the 5.5 months of May through October.
Mhm.
I think costs like $100 more than the 12-month plan.
It's $185 difference.
Yeah. So that 12-month plan is, it's already a great deal. It's
Yeah.
discounted 5.5 months plus free storage.
Right.
It comes from the discussion, Dave, that you'd be okay if we went to the 4-month plan rather than 3 as the minimum.
Oh, I have no strong feelings either way, and as the manager, I don't like to influence the decision on that. But I'm just presenting the impact to those. It could be, $700 boost to maybe 15 or so folks.
Well, from what I'm hearing here, it sounds like demand obviously is June, July, August, September. We have demand for those 4 months.
Right.
And it seems like we're leaving a little money on the table on some of these sites, not all of them, but some of them. So I either think we should go to a 4-month minimum for people who are leaving their trailers here for 12, and then give them the option if they want to do it that way or whatever that 12-month is. Like, I don't know how many of those 12 this would affect. How many of the 12 only stay 3 months?
17, right? But some of them are 4 months already.
Well, there's 17, so there's 12 of them that stay for 3 months.
Yeah, I'm just guessing, and I can see Sam like working the sheets right now. But
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just think we're leaving money on the, for somebody to bring a trailer, like, I'm just thinking that could bring a trailer up here, put it down there, and I'm going to pick out the 2 or 3 months I want to stay and then store it for super cheap for the other 9 or 10.
Right.
You could rent out that site.
I tend to agree with that approach. I wonder, just to check the economic incentives, what is it going to cost somebody to move the trailer off if they want to the additional cost?
yeah, it's like hundreds of dollars. Now we sort of found out from the Canadians this past season, where we gave them that offer to move it off to a cheaper option, but they realized the logistics and the expense of moving is not worth the savings.
Well, I think we're going to
Moving will be sufficient to discourage most people from not paying the additional amount for the 4th month.
and that's your choice, and we can rent the spot. I mean, that's your choice.
Are you moving if we go to that 4-month minimum?
Well, I think that kind of the general consensus is what people are talking about is doing the 4-month minimum on the 17 people. But we also need to look at the rates that the people are paying for the other 7 spots and the 10 spots that are just paying for 2 prime months, and the income we're making off of those months versus what they would be if we rented them out nightly. Because we need to look at those rates. They're really, what did we figure, about half in those months? So that's got a lot of feedback on the computer, but those people that are staying those prime months of July, August, or whatever they're paying, they're getting that monthly fee, but that's about half of what it would be if we rented those spots out nightly in our prime season. And I think we need to look at maybe raising that rate a little bit for those. I'm not saying making it a nightly rate, but we should consider evening it out a little more compared to the full-time seasonal, what we're doing with the 4-month seasonals, and making it a little bit more equal across the board. I'm not saying raise them to the nightly rate, but it should be a little closer than only paying half.
Are these issues related? It appeared to be that the issue of the 17 people at the 4-month minimum was pretty separate from the one you were just talking about.
Yeah, they all need to be discussed, Steve, because this was stuff we delayed from last month, but their decisions have to be made because Dave and Sam are booking for those months. And those rates would have to be published for those people. So that's why we're doing them now.
Yeah, it's true, Steve. It's 2 separate decisions or 2 separate policies. The first one that we talked about would be a 4-month minimum for on-site storage. And I think I heard some consensus around that. And now I think, Rita's moving on to the idea of the 2-month rate being too good a deal, particularly when it's in the peak season. and that could or should be adjusted upwards as a separate discussion, but could be inside the same motion. And then this idea of a 1 month, I just want to touch on is, let's get rid of it. The 1 month rate is very seldom used. It's very rare. It's a person that needs a spot for a month because they're a contractor or they're remodeling their house, or it's very rare. We don't sell 1 month.
Can't we leave that up to the discretion of you guys because it's so rare? If you have people come in and you have empty spots, you can make that decision. I don't think we have to have a published rate for it.
I would just, this is one area I could recommend we just get rid of the 1 month rate and just charge weekly. And 4 weeks is $1,200, and not many people
Good deal.
are going to need that or pay that. And so you don't get any first right of refusal on a 1 month plan. There's no perpetual carryover on this plan. It's a very one-off deal for the random traveler that needs a place to crash for a month, and we don't use it enough, and we should just get rid of it. And if you need 1 month or 6 weeks, we'll just you just pay weekly rates. So that's probably the easiest thing I can recommend for 1 month. Get rid of it.
I think that's perfect.
From the tidiness of the record, I think it would be better to have 3 separate motions rather than one motion.
Sure.
And nobody cares deeply about it. I'll move that we first adopt the 4 month minimum for annual storage.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Craig,
Aye.
Rita,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
motion carried.
And then
Okay.
we need to do a motion to do away with any 1 month rates. I'll motion that we just discontinue 1 month rates altogether.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Steve. Is there any other discussion on the elimination of the 1 month rate? Okay, Craig,
Aye.
Rita,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
and motion carried.
I don't know how to phrase the third item. Maybe somebody has a better understanding of it than I do.
Well, I just think we need to, maybe Sam might have some input on like the certain spots that rent out nightly. If we could kind of maybe do like 3/4 of the fee versus half. And like if we rent a certain spot out and it's like $1,500 a night or a month for a spot, and we rent it to a monthly, say for $845, I think we should come somewhere in between there on that monthly rate.
Yeah, so some figures to consider: the weekly for 4 weeks. So on full hookup sites, we're talking full hookup price. It's $305 with tax per week. So that 4 weeks would be $1,220.
And that's because they get 1 night free, right? If they go weekly.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so that's like 4 nights free in a month. You're saving, $200 off of nightly rates. So what you were looking at here as like a $1,500 take is sort of presuming it's different guests every week and they're all paying nightly rates.
Right. So why couldn't we do the monthly rate as like how much we charge for the weekly, where they're getting 4 nights free on those?
That to me
It's
is
just
what we did to the 1 month. It's like saying we don't do 2 month rates anymore. We just do weeklies up until 3 months starts that base rate. Sam and I have talked a little. There's 10 folks affected here. As you see, they're the green dots. Some of these are marginal sites that wouldn't sell every night, and maybe they would in July and August nowadays, but
Yeah.
like site 52 right across from the office here, like nobody really likes that site. It's so busy. We feel lucky to have someone there for 2 months kind of deal. Some of the the green, they're not really prime sites that are already going at that 2 month rate. And Yeah, go ahead, Pam.
No, on those green ones, I was just gonna say that on the green ones with the 2 month, they kind of make more than some of the 3 months with storage because you have, once the monthly leaves, they're rented nightly. So on some of those green ones, you make the same.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that, 3,000, 3,500 average. And so to not, there'd be a steep increase for those 10 folks, right? To go from $845 per month to $1,200 per month. That's a 50% increase. Maybe $1,000, $950 or something.
Yeah, it needs to be more comparable, I believe. I mean, you've seen it last summer that we were booked all the time, and it just seemed like, people were looking for any place to camp. But yet then we had these people that had these prime months tied up, and they were getting the best deal anywhere. And I know they've been there a long time, and I think that says something as well. But we do need to make it a little more, financially responsible with those fees as far as what everybody else in the park is paying.
There's that old principle in taxation that you want to pull just enough feathers off the bird so that they don't die. And I suspect there may be some similar issue here. A 50% increase is a lot for people to absorb in 1 year. Maybe there's some way we can get to an interim change.
Well, anyone have an idea on a figure they'd like to see? That's not quite 50%, but
If you went up 25% instead of 50%, you'd probably get more happiness if that's something we're seeking.
Well, and it's a way to get to, it might be an increase 25% this year, 25% another year until it is up to that rate. I think that's our goal, is to get so it's more comparable. But in 1 year, yes, that is steep.
And that would certainly work.
I agree. Is it my understanding that you no longer are doing any of these spots anymore in the office? The 2 month and 3 month spots?
For new folks off the list, we don't call, we might call a 2 month guy from 6 years ago out of duty to say, you know what, the policy has changed. We only place people that want 6 months.
Sure.
Would you take May to October?
Sure.
That's at least a courtesy call. But for folks on the waiting list that are only looking for July and August, they're not going to get in.
Okay. Well, so what do we look at raising 25%? What does that come up to be for those spots? I think that's fair. And like Sally said, we look at next year, look at them again.
Well, on the 845 figure, which is already 5% up from last year, right? It's like another 220 or so. It puts them up to $1,056.
So that's still,
but that's a 30%. If we already, we already built in a 5% on 845. Last year it was, 807. So 807, 25% more, $200. Then we're right at that $1,000 price.
and we're at about 500 less than we'd rent it out for nightly. So that seems like a pretty fair rate.
Would someone like to entertain a motion?
So you're looking at 20% then, since we already did the 5?
Sure.
Okay. That's what you're coming up with.
Yeah, it'd be 1,014.
If I knew precisely what it was that it applied to, I could make the motion, but I think we're going to need some help on the words here.
Well, you're looking at a total increase in rate for people in
2 months, no storage.
2 months, no storage.
2 and 3,
Pardon?
2 and 3 months.
3 months. Storage, you're looking at an total increase of 25%, including the 5% that was already approved at the last meeting. Is that correct?
Correct.
Correct, including
I
that
like
5.
those words. I move adoption of what Sally said.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion before we move forward?
We ran.
Sam, I think we need to read the motion back. Sam.
Wait.
Clear.
I'm confused. That was up for the 2 month, right?
Yeah, we were talking about the 10. You have a
Yeah,
3.
but I'm confused because Rita said 3 month.
Yeah, I know, but the yellow is the 3 and 4. The green is just the 2 month. I thought we were just talking about the green.
I thought we were just talking about the 10 green ones. What are we talking?
That's what I thought.
confused.
Well, it should be the 2 and 3 months because we've already addressed the 4 month people, right?
No, the 4 month deal is the minimum for storage. The 3+ month at $795, believe we were leaving alone.
Yeah.
And, it's just the 2 month rate that we would like to adjust, or that the motion is reflecting a 25% increase on the 2 month rate versus the 2020 rate. That, so the motion is to raise the 2 month rate 25% on the 2020 rate.
And what lots does that apply to?
The green ones.
Just
Okay.
the 2 months.
Ones that
But
are
it could be,
on the-
and yeah, there'll be no new offers for 2 month pricing effectively, as the waiting list, we've explained, like new people off the list don't get the option to pay the 2 month rate. So again, this is kind of a grandmothering of the current guests that are into this 2 month plan, which we have 10 of them. You're proposing to raise that 2 month rate 25% over the 2020 rate, which was 807 and 867 respectively. I will just kind of keep in mind that we would apply that same 25% to a prime site price, which
Sure.
last year was 869. Standard site was 807. So we're going to multiply those by 25%.
So somebody help me with the reasoning on just leaving the 3 month people at their low rate because they're still paying less than half.
Yeah, that's our program. That's our monthly seasonal programming. That all kind of has been the model, and that's what makes those $3,900 figures. And
No, I mean like there's the 1 month we did away with, and there's a 2 month, and then we have the 3 month column. So we're not addressing any of the 3 month rates, even though those monthly.
not in the context of this. We dialed those up 5%. And that has been the kind of benchmark, like, I don't know if you want to call it the default rate, but it's what most of the guests are, everybody but the green are used to paying. And, it would be a further extension of our rate hikes into 3 month plus would be, yeah, you can do that, but it's gonna drive everything up. It's gonna drive the 12 month plan up. Right?
No, it wouldn't, because if they're just coming for June, July, and August, say, or July, August, September, you're paying the monthly rate of $795 is what I'm looking at for a standard 3 month site, right?
Mm-hmm.
Rita, if you take the new prime, the 4577 12 month plan,
Yes.
and then you take what our monthly month to month is, it actually is lower doing the individual months than the 12 month plan on a prime site by $75.
Right, and that's the goal if we want to get them on the 12 month.
Right, but there's, I guess my thing is if you take the 3 months and raise that to like 1,000, there's really no, I mean, yeah, you would make more doing the 12-month, but
Well,
you
they
still
would be-
you still come out almost identical when you take, once they leave the sites and then we rent them nightly to other people, they're still making that same,
Same rate.
I don't know, same rate.
I just don't know if it seems right to raise the 10 people in the 2-month spot. I'm not sure. Because the 3-month spots are the same. They're in the same prime time of the summer.
Yeah, but
Maybe.
well, there's a few of them. I don't know.
I get it. I get it. I see where you're going, but it's more of a across the board treatment now. You know, we sort of have said, well, you know what, 5% wasn't enough.
Mhm.
Let's do 25 on
But that's
3 months, on
just
2
for
months.
those 10 spots, though. The 25. So they're getting hit the hardest.
Yep.
Yeah.
But honestly, the people who don't do the storage don't concern me near as much as you
Storage.
come for 3 months and you're paying a storage fee for 9 months. That concerns me because we can't make any more money off that spot.
What if we would look at it like this and say the 2-month and the 3-month people, say we don't raise them 25%, say we raise them both 15% to equal out, you know, instead of just zapping those 10 people on the green spots with 25%, we equal out the increase for the 3-month and the 2-month. Because we still have 7 people on that plan. So that's 17 people.
You have 7, but the green sites, I think, because.
I think you're muted, Sam.
Go ahead, Sam. Oh,
I would say like the green ones, you know, those people only want July and August, which is
Oh.
what everybody wants.
right.
So it's like the
You know,
2-month raising higher.
It may encourage those people to take the extra month. If we don't raise the 3-month one, maybe they'll take the 3-month plan. It's possible.
Yeah.
Good.
And like I say, the 3-month isn't a discrete plan. It's kind of the base rate for the 3-monthers, 4-monthers, 5-monthers. I mean, it's all across the board where if you're coming June through October.
Yeah, and June is half and half of the month for
Yeah.
the prime, non-prime. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's our like base
September's full-
rate is the 3-month
full rate.
rate.
And September's full prime rate. So it doesn't start till, okay. So that makes sense then. This is the middle of the month. I see. Yeah, okay.
I get it. Too many rates. But
There's
again, the 3-month has always been that default standard of what most folks pay. It's what everybody but the green are, you know, used to paying.
Yeah, I just want us trying to keep it, you know, fair and as close as we can and still, you know, financially keep everybody across the board, you know, where we need to be as well. So I agree then. I think that's a good motion.
Sam, would you read the motion back?
I put 2-month motion for those with no storage, a 25% increase off of the 2020 rates. Is that what it was?
Yes, that's what it was.
And those are designated by the green lots on the map.
Correct.
Second,
Okay. Is there any other discussion on that?
We ran hospitality the last 6 years here, and I can tell you last summer demand was immense, and that was felt across the whole community. We were closed and we were on the phone all the time, just so you know. And the pressure for service coming off of COVID will probably be immense again. So I don't think you need to apologize for optimizing the curve.
Thank you.
well said.
Okay, let's take a vote if there's no other comments or discussion. Craig?
Aye.
Rita?
I
Steve?
Aye.
Bob?
I
Sally? Aye. Okay, motion carried. Any other discussion on rates?
Dave, you're probably the best to handle
Before
this.
we adjourn, we should acknowledge Samantha's award and recognition by Visit Cook County.
Yay!
Yay.
Well,
That's right.
Sam.
That's right. Bob, you were saying?
I was just wondering, looking at all the rates and the brackets and the changes, is there an MBA grad student with a background in statistics who could sit down and look at the weighted value of each of your lots and figure out position, occupancy, demand, season, that sort of stuff, and then figure out a way to optimize the return on the whole property, all 300, based on all of those variables simultaneously? Because this is really complex, but it's also a little bit capricious. And it would be great to have somebody come and put numbers on all those values and then see where that curve peaks. And then you could define why.
Maybe we could get some business school master's degree student
You got it. And so,
under the supervision of the professor at a.
for example, in Duluth, those rates on a hotel, vary night by night. And they have formulas that drive that. In Grand Marais, some rates in the summer move night by night. I'm sure somebody has formulas for that. This is a great case study in complex, multivariate, demand-driven, weather-dependent summer aspiration. And somebody ought to be able to crunch numbers on this, and then you wouldn't have to bear the guilt for raising the rate.
That sentence by itself is worthy of a good grade.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, I get it, Bob. It's called yield management.
That's what it is.
Is what hotels and airlines do. And the more you are booked, the more expensive it gets. And we've been dabbling in that. We've done that in terms of lakeside pricing, being $10 more for the sites that are in demand. So on an amateur level, we've already adopted this. But to the extent that you're talking, no, it's a great plan, great idea. Anecdotally, we know where the demand is, what the sites are, and yet we are reluctant to go into pricing that idea of a fluid price that, we don't, depending on when you book and how close and how full your price is. And it would be difficult to transition into where we have just the rack card, it's $50 a night. That's the standard example for RV parks. I haven't done much research here. I don't see RV parks being as savvy as the airlines and the hotels and adopting that, yield management into their point of sale or into their booking software. But it is or could be the future. And I think it's going to quickly. The problem, though, as we know, we've been talking about for years, is it's going to really show that discount for monthly is generous and perhaps,
Too generous.
too generous.
I would
There's
note
gotta be.
that it doesn't cost very much to ask what the answer would be from somebody who knows what they're doing. And then that's a separate question from whether we would adopt any or all of their proposals.
There's got to be a grad student at Leibovitz School of Business just down the road who would love to spend a month or two with their feet in the water, ticking on their keyboard, answering a lot of these questions. And then you'd have curves that would be defensible rather than speculative.
Hey, that's great, Bob.
I'm outsourcing guilt here.
Or you're stepping up as a new member for recruitment.
We never changed our B&B rates. We just had fixed rate and that was it. But had we done that, we could have doubled our take easily because demand was huge. People would call me and say, "You're not going to rent this room?" And I'd say, "No, but it's a one-nighter. It's empty." I said, "I know that." "Yeah, but you could make money." I said, "I know that, but I don't feel like changing sheets tomorrow." It's all those variables that are loose on the table. Putting a number on them would make it easier to say no, rather than.
Well, we don't have any sheets to worry about,
Which is nice.
except maybe the people who are 3 sheets to the wind when they come back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been
We
following
had
this.
some of that too, yeah.
So, in my member associations and online, I've been following this for a number of years, this idea of yield management and the price depends on the occupancy. And there's been some pretty good arguments against it, at least in the camping and RV industry, because we're so like, let's say, endeared, and that idea of like, we're the campers' friends, and that the prices are the same for everyone. And especially amongst campers, they sit around the campfire and they compare rates and they say like, how much did you pay? And how much did you pay? And when there's this discrepancy, there's hard feelings, and people are put off by that idea that, I didn't get the best rate because I booked late. And for a big corporation, they don't really have a event, but for a little mom and pop or for an iconic campground like ourselves, there's been a lot of backlash in the industry for some of the parks that have tried this.
Yeah, we never changed our rates, and we didn't make a whole lot of money, but we had a very clean guilt slate.
I'd like to bring up one new business thing since all the seasonal list is what, 300 now or whatever it is. And I know Dave and I talked a few months back, and some thoughts on different ways to alleviate that 300 people waiting list. And we had a couple different things we threw back and forth. Someone brought up a suggestion of like putting those sites that open up each year up for auction online, and people bid on that seasonal site. Another one was selling, buying lottery tickets and drawing for those seasonal sites. So I don't know what anybody thinks about those ideas. But they were two possibilities to alleviate that complete waiting list of 300 people.
It would be helpful if the discussion were put in writing so we could have a chance to think about it in more leisure.
Mm-hmm. I do wonder how much time it takes for Sam. I'm assuming you primarily do the contacts of the people who are on the waiting list. How labor intensive is that? And is there a fast way to get that information out? Even without having an auction or a bidding war, but just, that's got to be awful.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time. At the sports show, I talked to a couple of the other campgrounds, and one guy said that they used to have a list of 300 to 400 people, and the way they cut that down was they asked for $100 from every person, and as soon as they did that, they cut their list to one.
I would say a $250 deposit if it's possible, but
so I don't know how that would, keeping. If you'd have, I don't know how that works with. Granted, these are private campgrounds. I don't know how it works with city and all the financial general fund money, whatever, pay back. But that's what, they just said they asked for the 100. I have kind of started getting, everyone's email addresses now. And so I do go ahead of my list and just keep up with it, where I'll email 20 people at a time and say, are you still interested? And if they're yes, then I keep them on. If they're no, I take them off. Have we had pretty good luck filling the empty sites off the waiting list always?
Good Lord, yes. That costs pretty good.
We do. Honestly, this last year, I didn't even, after, I started doing it, and then when COVID hit, I just ended it. I didn't even bother going anymore. And then we used majority of them all summer with contractors. So
I do think that's something that in the future, the park board will need to discuss is, do we want to maintain that many sites that can be reserved for the whole summer, or is it just all register online? And
the reason I brought it up is because Sam will start probably working on this in January, don't you, Sam? Or February, I guess. They have January to pay their seasonal.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think Steve's on something here where we can frame up some ideas for January park board discussion, that some alternative methods to work through the waiting list or the process there. We can, generate some ideas for you guys to react to, lottery, bid, deposits.
Right.
It's definitely good new business.
I would think that a board would want to be perceived by the city council as optimizing the revenue for the general budget for Grand Marais. Just as a matter of course, without being vicious about it, but just being thoughtful and, maybe a tad aggressive without being rude. So the council thinks well of the enterprise.
That's right, Bob. That has been our direction from council, and it's built into the master plan. Into one of the policies there is to maximize our revenue, and so that's something we have really kept front of mind every fall when we look at rates and look at the health of the general fund. I also have that discussion with counselors during like department head meetings when we review budgets. Something you all aren't involved in as closely, but it's always the direction of council to make the most that we can down here.
And the council's pretty happy with us after this last year because we have the same income as last year and 18% less costs, which goes right into the city coffers. And we can't even designate it for the golf course.
No, yeah, we've always had the grace of council. We've always had their back, or they've had our back. We've been successful, generally overachieving on the revenue side and underspending on the budget. And so we'll continue to run that tight ship for them.
Well, bravo to you guys for a good season. That was a tough season to have to work that with everybody.
We were getting old already, but when you have to open your door with a mask on and greet people from Minneapolis, the joy really goes out of it quick. So it was a good time to bail. So I don't know how B&Bs are going to do it.
And Sam and Dave, you may have picked up some things you did this year because of COVID that turn out to be really good strategies for how to manage things in the future as well. So who knows?
Good point.
Well, Mike Raymond, when he listed our place, said, well, as a business, you aren't worth much, but it is pretty.
And it worked. Well, Sally, thank you so much for all your service.
You're so welcome.
Enjoy your Tuesday nights in 2021.
Yeah, I'll have to come down and hassle the two of you when COVID is over.
Anytime.
See you around, Sally.
Pardon?
And Rita, if you will send him the email, then you can come back, right?
Yep.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Move we adjourn.
Oh,
They say, oh, we have a need to adjourn.
it's an executive decision. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you all.